The sanctuary lights dimmed, the choir's final harmonies fading into a heavy silence. Cameras panned across the audience as Donnie McClurkin, one of gospel's most celebrated voices, stepped to the pulpit. His usual confident smile was absent. Instead, his face carried the weight of something unspoken, something about to rupture the perfect image that fans had held for decades. Then, the confession. His voice cracked, trembling as he admitted struggles that many had only whispered about in hushed tones. The words tumbled out like stones. A history of brokenness, of loneliness, of desires he had fought against and faith he clung to desperately. The crowd gasped, some clutching their chests, others shaking their heads in disbelief. "Church," he said, his hand gripping the microphone as though it were the only thing keeping him upright. "I have lived a life of confusion, and I've carried secrets that weighed me down for years." Gasps, murmurs. A woman in the front row sobbed audibly. The gospel world erupted, social media flooded with clips of his words, hashtags blazing across Twitter. Overnight, Donnie McClurkin's confession became the most talked about scandal in gospel music. But as shocking as it was, most assumed that moment marked the climax of his story, a painful revelation followed by healing, redemption, and closure. That was the narrative fans wanted. That was the ending they expected. They were wrong, because now, his son has spoken. And his words didn't close the book, they tore it wide open. According to alleged insiders, Donnie's son began speaking candidly in private conversations that later leaked online. He didn't just confirm parts of his father's confession, he added layers to it. Layers of family strain, silent nights filled with tension, and questions about whether the world-famous gospel singer ever truly found peace. "I love my dad," he reportedly told a close friend in a conversation that later made its way to gossip blogs. "But growing up, it wasn't the life people think it was. The image you saw on stage, that wasn't always the man at home." Those words spread like wildfire. Fans who once applauded Donnie's vulnerability now wrestled with doubts. Was the confession just the tip of the iceberg? Was there a deeper, darker truth behind the gospel legend's carefully curated image? For years, Donnie McClurkin had stood as a pillar of gospel music, a survivor, a testimony. But his son's revelations cracked that foundation, forcing the world to re-examine everything they thought they knew. And as the whispers turned into headlines, one haunting question lingered over the gospel industry like smoke after a fire. Was Donnie McClurkin's confession really the end of his story, or just the beginning of an unraveling nobody was prepared for? To the public, Donnie McClurkin's life was a testimony of victory. The Grammy Awards, the soaring anthems, the televised performances where he declared triumph over every trial. Fans saw a man transformed by faith, leading countless others into worship. His songs were soundtracks for revival, weddings, and midnight cries. On Instagram, fans left glowing comments beneath his posts. "Pastor Donnie, your testimony inspires me daily. Proof that God's grace is greater than our struggles." To millions, he was more than a singer, he was living proof of redemption. But behind the scenes, cracks were forming. Alleged insiders whispered of lonely hotel rooms after sold-out concerts, of long silences at family gatherings, of a man who seemed constantly torn between who he wanted to be and who the world expected him to be. Sometimes he'd come home and just sit in the dark, a family acquaintance reportedly shared. No music, no words, just silence. Like he was carrying a weight none of us could lift. His son, often pictured smiling beside him at events, allegedly began to notice the distance at an early age. While fans gushed over the bond they saw on stage, the reality behind closed doors was murkier. "I loved being around my dad when he was relaxed," his son allegedly confided. But those moments were rare. Most of the time he seemed tired, like even being a father was just another role he had to play. Social media painted a flawless portrait, father and son laughing together, posing at industry events, celebrating milestones. Yet in comment sections, sharp-eyed followers began asking questions. Why does his son always look uncomfortable in photos? Why does Donnie talk about everything except family life? The praise was loud, but so were the suspicions. And when Donnie finally confessed, the pieces began to align in ways that unsettled even his most loyal supporters. The perfect image was shattering, and in the cracks, the truth, or at least whispers of it, began to seep out. Had the gospel world fallen in love with an illusion, carefully crafted to hide the pain simmering underneath? The leaks began quietly, almost innocently. A Facebook post here, a private screenshot there. But soon, they spiraled into a storm that no publicist could contain. The first alleged leak came from a supposed family group chat. In it, Donnie's son wrote, "Y'all act like this confession is news to us. We been living this." That single sentence, once screenshotted and shared, ignited a frenzy. Then came the alleged audio clips, shaky muffled recordings uploaded to anonymous YouTube channels. In one, a voice believed to be Donnie's son is heard saying, "I respect him as an artist. As a father, that's complicated." The most explosive leak, however, came from what was described as a private elders' meeting at his church. According to someone who claimed to be in the room, his son's words were read aloud to leaders, leaving the room in stunned silence. One elder reportedly whispered, "If this gets out, we're finished." Blogs ran with the story, embellishing every detail. Headlines screamed about betrayal, about generational wounds, about the hypocrisy of public faith versus private struggle. Some fans dismissed it as gossip. Others swore it was the missing puzzle piece that made sense of everything. Even fellow gospel artists allegedly weighed in behind the scenes. One unnamed singer supposedly said during a rehearsal, "We all knew Donnie was fighting battles. But hearing his son say it, that changes the whole conversation." And then, another bombshell, an alleged private conversation between Donnie and his son, leaked through a friend of the family. In it, Donnie reportedly pleaded, "Don't let the world use your words against me. I'm still your father." To which his son allegedly replied, "Then be a father, not a headline." The authenticity of these leaks remains unverified, but their impact was undeniable. Fans who once stood firm in defense of Donnie's confession now questioned whether they had been given the whole truth. The gospel industry, normally quick to rally around one of its own, fell into uneasy silence. Every leak chipped away at the legacy. Every whisper suggested there was more beneath the surface. And with each revelation, the question grew louder. If his own son couldn't defend him, who could? The breaking point allegedly came on a quiet Sunday evening, away from the cameras and the stage lights. Sources close to the family claimed Donnie's son broke down in tears during a conversation with friends, confessing the toll his father's public image had taken on him. "I felt like I had to be perfect, because he reportedly said. But nobody saw what that did to me." According to one witness, the young man described nights when the weight of his father's fame felt suffocating, when he wished for a normal life without the constant comparisons, without the whispers of church members speculating about the McClurkin family behind closed doors. Donnie himself was said to be unraveling. In a private moment recounted by an alleged insider, he was overheard crying in his study, saying, "God, I confessed. Why isn't it enough? Why won't they just let me heal?" Tensions reportedly boiled over in one heated exchange. "You confessed for the world," his son allegedly shouted during an argument. "But what about confessing to me, to your family?" Witnesses claimed the room went silent, Donnie staring at the floor, unable to answer. For the first time, it seemed the man who could command thousands with a song had no words left. By the end of that week, rumors swirled that Donnie considered stepping down from ministry altogether, retreating from the spotlight in hopes of salvaging what little peace he could find. But others insisted he would never walk away, that his identity was too entwined with the pulpit to ever let it go. Still, the question haunted those closest to him. Had Donnie's confession, meant to bring healing, instead shattered the very relationships he needed most? The fallout spread like wildfire across the gospel community. Twitter timelines overflowed with debates, Instagram comment sections turned into battlegrounds, and YouTube creators churned out endless reaction videos dissecting every leak. Supporters rallied, insisting that Donnie's confession was an act of bravery, and that his son's words were simply the raw pain of a young man processing life in the shadow of fame. Healing takes time, one fan tweeted. We should be praying for them, not tearing them apart. Critics, however, seized the moment. They accused Donnie of carefully curating his public confession, while hiding the deeper wounds at home. Gossip blogs labeled him the gospel hypocrite, running clickbait headlines that spread faster than official statements ever could. Within church circles, the division grew sharper. Some pastors defended Donnie passionately, warning congregations against judging a man's private journey. Others, however, reportedly told their members to be cautious, suggesting that the scandal risked damaging the credibility of the entire gospel industry. Even within his own congregation, whispers spread. According to alleged attendees, one church meeting turned tense when members demanded answers about the leaks. We need transparency, one reportedly said. If we can't trust our shepherd, who can we trust? Meanwhile, gospel artists who once proudly shared the stage with Donnie grew quieter. Some unfollowed him on social media, others posted cryptic messages about wolves in sheep's clothing, fueling speculation without ever naming names. But perhaps the most telling reaction came from the public. For every fan posting heart emojis and scripture verses under Donnie's photos, another posted memes mocking his confession, splicing clips of his sermons with his son's alleged quotes. The industry was split, the church was divided, and the family, at the center of it all, seemed more fragile than ever. Would the fallout push Donnie into isolation, or force him to make an even bigger revelation? Just when it seemed the storm couldn't intensify further, a twist emerged that stunned even the most jaded observers. According to alleged insiders, Donnie's son didn't just stop with words about his father, he hinted at secrets yet to be told. In a supposed private message leaked to gossip blogs, he wrote, "People think they know the story. They don't. There's more, way more." The internet erupted. What more could there possibly be? What secrets were still hidden behind the McClurkin name? Some claimed he was preparing to release a tell-all interview, sitting down with a major media outlet to share his side in full detail. Others whispered of a book deal already in the works, promising to expose the truth about growing up McClurkin. And then came the most shocking rumor that Donnie himself had confessed to close friends that he feared his son's next move. If he talks, Donnie allegedly said in a private call, everything I've built could come crashing down. Was it guilt, fear, or simply the dread of a father watching his legacy slip from his hands? The twist sent fans into overdrive. Some begged Donnie's son to speak out, insisting the gospel world needed transparency. Others pleaded with him to protect his father, warning that airing more family secrets would destroy them both. But in hushed conversations, another rumor surfaced, one that could upend everything. Allegedly, Donnie had been considering a second, even more public confession, one that would address not just his personal struggles, but the wounds within his family. If true, it meant the first confession was never the full story. And as the gospel industry held its breath, one chilling question lingered. What truth was Donnie McClurkin still hiding? Weeks passed, but answers never came. Donnie remained largely silent, posting only generic scripture verses on social media, avoiding the storm swirling around him. His son, too, pulled back, refusing to confirm or deny the leaks attributed to him. The silence only fueled speculation. Fans scoured every caption, every photo, every sermon for hidden meaning. Was Donnie preparing to step down? Was his son preparing to speak out? Nobody knew for sure. What was clear, however, was that the gospel world would never view the McClurkin family the same way again. The confession that once seemed like a moment of healing had instead opened a door to endless questions. Some saw it as a cautionary tale, proof that even the most celebrated voices can crumble under the weight of their own contradictions. Others saw it as an invitation to deeper compassion, a reminder that behind every stage light and award lies a human story filled with scars. And yet, the biggest question remained unanswered. Was Donnie McClurkin's confession the truth, or merely the first chapter in a story still unfolding? Because as one gospel blogger put it best in a viral post, this isn't the end. This is the prelude. The real story hasn't even started yet. You verkisif open trek. Wonder tweegoit detected.